What is going on, Gunners? Chisgule here, and today we're going to talk about Genghis Khan, new commander coming to Rise of Kingdoms on the wheel. Hasn't hit yet, but pretty excited to see when he does. If you like commander guides, you should definitely like and subscribe because we've reviewed literally every single commander in the game, and we are a sponsored creator with Rise of Kingdoms. Now, Genghis Khan is a pretty awesome, heavy hitting cavalry and skill based commander. He's also got the versatility tree, but I'll be honest, I really don't like it, and there's not a lot of reason to put points into it. We can talk about that in another video. In fact, we talked about that recently in a live stream when we looked at everything that came to this most recent update. Now, when we do a commander guide, I like to review the skills, the talents, and then talk about how you can unlock the commander, the order in which we'd apply those skills, and my favorite part is, of course, the pairings. So let's get right into the skills. The very first skill is just simply raw damage. 1,700 damage factor, and worth calling out that the rage requirement is only 950, which is pretty interesting. You can get your primary attack off a whole heck of a lot faster with Genghis Khan. That is really interesting. I don't know how that works with like a primary and a secondary that has a different rage requirement. I suppose you can see here the rage requirement's 1,000. I suppose that makes the rage requirement for both commanders lower, which seems really, really good to me. So anyways, reducing the rage requirement to get your active skills to go off is kind of like generating rage. And, I'll compare to Frederick. Let's compare to Frederick. Frederick, when you factor in the percent chance that he'll do damage, does on average slightly more damage, but has a higher rage cost. So this makes sense. The damage is also spread over time and has the potential to be way more damage if you get really, really lucky with your random number generation. So I think that this is a pretty balanced first skill, but it's heavy, heavy damage. It's a min-max on doing that damage at a low rage cost. I really, really like it. The next skill reduces the rage cost of abilities even further by up to 100. So now your abilities go all the way down to 850 rage, which seems like, man, you could be machine gunning a ton of high damage abilities, and increases the cavalry march speed by a solid 15%, which is great. That, of course, is at max value for those skills. However, when troops led by this commander are attacked, the march speed bonus is lost, so you get really, really slow, and it's reduced by an additional 30%. So not only do you lose the 15% boost, you then are 30% slower. So basically, if you get in combat, you're stuck there. But this guy's really good at getting to the combat, which is something that I think is honestly great. That's honestly great. This skill is all about rage manipulation more than anything else, and the speed is kind of a cool boost. And if you get in combat, you're gonna have to fight, which is fine if you're a high power player, less fine if you're not. Even with cavalry talents and the charge talents in particular that I love and we'll talk about in a little bit, it's not going to make up for the fact that you are really, really hurting with a 30% speed reduction. Now, the next skill is that when the army led by this commander is at more than 70% strength and contains only cavalry units, you deal an additional 30% damage. I mean, that's a lot of damage. Bring all cavalry with this commander. No brainer. And final skill, and I think this is really fascinating, when the army led by this commander is less than 50% strength, and contains only cavalry again, so this is really a cavalry commander, increase skill damage dealt by 30%, and gains an additional 25 rage when attacked. Wow. Wow. I mean, you have here a true rage monster, and you're going to want to run all cavalry with this commander, but we haven't even gotten to the expertise skill. While the army led by this commander contains only cavalry, after casting the Chosen One has a 30% chance to cast level 5 Chosen One again instantly, double strike. Yeah, I'm speechless. That's so good. That is so, so good. Raw damage with rage manipulation to make that damage go Absolutely insane. And that rage manipulation, for instance, is the thing that a commander like Osman has really been lacking or missing. None of the skills really contribute to that. We'll talk about pairings in a little bit, but this commander is in many ways like Osman, but focused on cavalry. Now, the skill trees are real, or so the talent trees are really, really informative as to what you might do with this commander. I mean, it's all cavalry and skill, but before we go there, I want to point out that this commander has 4 relevant skills on the battlefield, although one of them is only relevant when you're at higher than 70% strength. One of them is only relevant when you're less than 50% strength. And if you're between 50 and 70% strength, I guess you're getting the benefit of only the first 2 skills and the expertise if you have it, which is an interesting dynamic that I don't know that we've really experienced in a lot of other commanders, other than a little bit with El Cid and a little bit with Richard the First, where potentially you've got sort of 4 skills relevant on the battlefield. Well, not sort of with Richard. So let's start to talk a little bit about what all this means for the talents, because the versatility tree, we're not even going to look at it because it's not terribly exciting. We will look at cavalry and skill, and there's a bunch of commanders that have those combinations. Here's the cavalry and skill tree combination I really like. For when I'm out in the open field, I'm trying to maximize my march speed while still increase my damage. What I think is really interesting about this commander is that you really want to emphasize rage generation. You really want to emphasize damage. So I still really like the skill tree, heading for perhaps Rejuvenate first, then Feral Nature, then also getting Naked Rage to do even more damage because he does so much damage already. And you could look at picking up Latent Power. I don't know that this commander has additional skill damage, though. That's something I'm going to have to look into. Let me know in the comments exactly how that works with this commander. What I do think is really interesting is the implications for movement speed, and also, like, look, while I like the idea of reducing enemy attacks, I think this is a commander that you really want to min-max for doing as much damage as you possibly can. They've got so much raw damage, and the double strike is just so busted. You want to make that hit be so insanely painful that it's just unbearable. That's my opinion. Another way you could do this is to go full cavalry tree, right? Heading up for Rallying Cry, and then also grabbing Rejuvenate, abandoning Feral Nature. That would be a way to go. Pushing it on the rage gen and getting as much movement speed as you can to sort of be in relevant places seems like the way I would go with this commander. If I had a gun held to my head, I would probably be using a variation of this build with these 2 points out of disarm and into naked rage to get the increased damage. That's the way I would go. Oh, and I have 1 point over here that's in peacekeeping, which would finish out naked rage. That's what I would do. Now, this commander can only be unlocked from a wheel event, which means, hopefully it's coming sometime soon, the kingdom has to be over 120 days old for it both to show up and for it to be usable. So you've got to be in an older kingdom to get your hands on Genghis Khan, and we're in a kingdom that's old enough for picking him up. So that's a thing we're definitely going to do, and we will definitely film us spinning the wheel. After you've unlocked him, I would assume you can use your universal sculptures, but we don't actually know, and I can't tell from this particular diagram as to exactly how that would work. I can't tell how exactly that would work. What I want to talk about now, my friends, is my favorite part of the video, and that is the pairings. The pairings with Genghis Khan. Oh, baby. Let's start at the legendary tier. Obvious pairing choice would be Cao Cao, Cavalry Commander. I still really like using Cao Cao as the secondary and Genghis Khan as the primary because of the rage generation from the skill tree. That's the way I would do that. And I love the big damage coming from Cao Cao. Reducing the damage they deal is great. And you generate rage here. This is everything you want. Pair with Cao Cao. This does it all. This is exactly the thing to do, in my opinion. Another combination would be Minamoto. Both do really, really big damage, and Warlord elevates that damage, which also is another way to get it doing extra damage. The reason I still prefer the Rage Gen route is that you've got a Rage Gen engine going with this commander with the Rage reduction, so I would push that engine to its absolute extreme and min-max the heck out of that thing. Now, you could use Richard the First, but you're basically saying, okay, well, the third skill here is going to be completely irrelevant, which I don't love. Um, I I don't love this pairing, but you could do it for a unit that had more sustain. I would not pair with Charles Martel. Hannibal Barca cares about lots of different troops, whereas you really care about just bringing cavalry, so that's not a pairing I would make. A pairing I would consider, an unexpected pairing, is actually Yi Seong-Ye, which might seem weird, but let's talk about this for a second. Yi Seong-Ye has got huge synergy with the damage boost on the primary skill. So, I mean, like a 50% damage lift on the base of 1700 on Genghis Khan seems absolutely exceptional as a combination. The thing you're losing out on here is the extra damage boost to archers, which is a really big deal, but you're pushing the Rage Gen engine yet again, and you're doing AoE damage. I think Cao Cao is a better pairing, probably, but the synergy of Destiny could actually be the determining factor that makes that busted, especially if you're an Ark of Osiris and you get to hit lots of targets. That could get out of hand fast. That said, Khan has to be the primary in this configuration because you're really not interested in the archer skill tree, although the archer talents are actually not all that bad. You could increase the damage of primary and secondary commanders a whole heck of a lot. You could get a lot of rage gen. You could still do the skill tree. So there's some wasted talents here. There's actually a lot of wasted talents. Yeah, I don't love it. I wouldn't do that. We're brainstorming. It's cute. I don't know that it's good. I wouldn't pair with El Cid because he cares a lot about archers. Caesar is kind of interesting, actually. You could use Caesar as the primary. You'd have way less rage gen, which I really don't like. But you could use a strategic prowess, close formation, an effortless build with some extra points spun off to armored joints. Maybe some extra points spun off to fight to the death. I don't love it. I think it's okay, but not out of this world. I think a more interesting pairing, however, is Freddy. Now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of synergy between the two, other than the fact that they both do huge, huge damage, and you're going in on that like insane DPS plan. I think that if you had a pairing that could elevate both commanders a little bit more, and I'll show an example of that in a little bit, I think you might be better off. An example of that, but not a choice I would actually recommend, is Mehmed II. And that is because Mehmed II, although he does elevate damage and attack, which is really, really good, he is doing less damage to begin with because you're not hitting a city in most cases. You're in the open field. That's where most combat is happening. You're defending a structure or attacking a structure in Ark of Osiris, not a city. And Yi Seong-Ye just has more damage overall, so you may as well be using Yi Seong-Ye. If you were hitting a city, Mehmed is a great plan. If you're not, less exciting. And we should talk, well, I mean, you could cavalry rally a city with Genghis Khan, right? Like, you could definitely do that. That would be interesting. Okay, that covers the legendary commanders. Let's talk about the epic commanders. Kusunoki's an archer commander. You don't want to pair. Scipio is about damage reduction. And I suppose you could, in the off chance that this procs when you're going to do a skill attack, could be a really interesting combination. I don't love it. What I do love much more is Boudica. Boudica is a really interesting combination, optimally with her as a secondary because the integration tree is just not all that exciting. But I love that she is going to generate rage and do some healing on plan with what you're doing with Khan. I guess if you're fighting barbarians, use Lohar, but otherwise don't. Belisarius is an interesting choice. I'd love to see him be the primary, reduce the defense, and then boom, you hit the enemy. The problem is that he doesn't have the skill tree, he's got the mobility tree. So if you're making a more mobile unit, I guess you could go in on this plan. But the whole point of this commander, I feel like, is to break the rage engine. So in that regard, Belisarius is not as optimal. What I think is way more optimal, and as a secondary commander choice is really interesting, is Sun Tzu. Using Sun Tzu as the secondary to your Khan is really interesting because Sun Tzu is going to generate a ton of rage for every target hit. And Sun Tzu really only cares only so much about having infantry, barely at all. And there's a skill damage boost here. The synergy is actually super real with this pairing, and I like it a whole heck of a lot. I think Joan of Arc is not all that amazing unless you're, I guess, really focused on supporting your allies. She does restore rage, but you've really only got to be wanting to go this route if you care a lot about supporting your allies and you're one of the weaker players on the field. But like, if you're one of the weaker players on the field, you've got a Khan. You've got your Khan as the primary. You got them skilled up enough for that? I don't know. Osman is an interesting choice because they both do a lot of damage for the same reason that Freddy is interesting. Osman is interesting. You're going all in on the damage plan, and I think that's fine. Another pairing that I think is more interesting is Pelagius. Pelagius is a cavalry commander that restores rage and also cares about damage. You could have Pelagius be the primary, which would save you on your stars and your experience tomes. The only problem is that I don't know how this actually works with the reduced rage requirement on Khan, but you probably need him to be the primary in order to have that additional rage benefit, in which case Khan should probably be the primary in that setup. Ulji Mundok is an infantry commander, would not recommend. Similarly, Herman does have the rage generation to come to the table, but he's an archer commander, so it's not really a pairing we're looking at. Baibars, however, is kind of an interesting idea. Has area of effect damage and a march speed reduction, which is really good because you're going to be going slower too when you're in combat. So if you're going to chase down anybody, you need them to be slower. And I love cavalry attack boost in this case because that means you're elevating the damage from your skill attacks, which is exactly what you want paired with Khan. There's also some extra mobility here afforded to you when you're getting out of combat. I think Baibars is a great combination. I suppose an honorable mention is our good friend Lancelot. I mean, he's a cavalry commander, but I think you can do better. If you're at a kingdom that's over 120 days old, you're probably past this point. And Dragon Lancer, I mean, just don't. Just don't. So, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed this video reviewing Genghis Khan. This is a commander we're definitely going to work on. We're probably going to pair with Cao Cao because that just seems like a very natural combination. We will definitely test with Yi Ye, see what that looks like. We'll test with Sun Tzu just to get a sense of what that looks like. And I'm excited for this commander coming out. Are you going to spin the wheel for this guy? How far are you going to spin the wheel? Leave a comment down below. Like and subscribe. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.